afternoon, everyone. As we are aware, we have all assembled here for the commemoration of the 70 years of India-Japan relations. And what better than having the Japanese themselves here. I have the immense pleasure in inviting each one of you. I'll be introducing both the speakers as and when just before they speak. At the outset, as part of the customary remarks on behalf of Pondicherry University, specifically the Vice Chancellor, who has also conveyed his greetings to be conveyed a few minutes ago. He would have loved to be here due to his unavoidable engagements in Delhi. He had to leave, because of which he's not around, but he certainly wanted to be, so he has conveyed his special greetings to both the Consul General as well as Professor Horimoto. Without wasting much time, on behalf of Department of Politics and International Studies at Pondicherry University and all of us gathered here, a warm welcome. It's already very warm, but yet a warm welcome to the Consul General as well as Professor Horimoto to Pondicherry University.
Respected Professor Horimoto Takanori and Consul General Mr. Taga Masayuki, and the deans, HODs, faculty members, and students of Department of Politics and International Studies and other sister departments. So, very good afternoon to all of you. So, I am very happy to be here in this event celebrating India-Japan relations in the 21st century. So, our Honorable Vice Chancellor is willing to attend this, but due to the preoccupation, so he could not attend this function. So, he told me to represent. So, as all of you agree with me that I cannot match his personality, but still, so as I representing this event. So I have, as I told to our professor and then Mr. Masayuki also. So I stayed in Japan for 2 years. So 2 years is long period. Definitely one can easily understand the culture and then the seriousness of the Japanese people and how they bounced back after the World War II. All those things you can visibly see in Japan. So I experienced also the warmth of the Japanese people. So especially the political science people, if they visit there, you can easily understand the nature of politics and the international relations they do and the nature of the political science here. There are a lot of difference I could see here, but still I came to know that Professor Horimoto Takanori is has played major role in India-Japan relations, and this year, as you know, it is the 70th anniversary of establishing the diplomatic relations between India and Japan. So though it is established in 1952, but our India and Japan had, as you know, very rich cultural and civilization ties. So dating back to 750 AD, you can, because you are political science people, you know very well. As you know, we have rich cultural as well as political establishment, the common civilization also, you can say. So like stalwarts like Swami Vivekananda, Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore, and J.R.D. Tata, and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, and Judge Radha Binod Pal. All those people have very well, had interact with Japan. So there are many bonds, you can say. As a chemist, I can say many bonds between our India and Japan. There are many economic relations between India and Japan also. And in the area of science and technology, so there was a bilateral science and technology cooperation. It was formalized through intergovernmental agreement signed in 1985, and then there was a Indo-Japan digital partnership also. So there are many science and technology program which is between India and Japan. So on the 70th anniversary of establishment of diplomatic relations between India and Japan, the ties between two countries have deepened in every sphere, be it strategic, economic, people-to-people context. But the recent visit to India by Japanese Prime Minister Mr. Fumio Kishida for the annual summit laid out a roadmap for deepening this special strategic and global partnership between the two countries in a post-COVID world also. So I have introduced Pondicherry University to our Japanese visitors. So I do not want to take much time on introducing Pondicherry University. So with these few words, so I welcome our guest, and I am very eager to hear from Professor Horimoto Takanori. Before this, I thank the organizer, Dr. Nand Kishore and Dr. Richa Tiwari also for organizing this, and also the other faculty members in the politics and international studies. Thank you one and all.
Thank you, sir, for those insightful words on India-Japan relations. I think both India and Japan have grown in such a way that the relations have become matured. I think the type of bonhomie between the Indian Prime Minister and the Japanese Prime Ministers, before it was Shinzo Abe and now Kishida, I think is only visible in the type of ties that we are having. We'll move on to the next one. That's the keynote address by the Consul General of Japan in Chennai, Mr. Taga Masayuki.
It's okay. So, anyway, my PowerPoint projection is just a latter part of my talk. So, first, let me thank you, Dr. Nanda Kishore, for introducing myself about my career, and Professor Taranikalas, and professors and students of Pondicherry University. It's my great pleasure to talk in front of you about Indo-Japan relation. But today, since we have the guest from Japan, Professor Horimoto, he is an expert on that current foreign relation and foreign policy of India, foreign policy of United States, Japan-India relation, Japan-US, US-India relation. So I leave this current issue to Professor Horimoto. So I rather today touch upon that some historical aspect of our long relation between Japan and India. As Professor Taranikar said, that this year marks 70 years of the establishment of our diplomatic relation between Japan and India. Actually, this was 1952, the April, that San Francisco Peace Treaty became effective. Actually, San Francisco Peace Treaty is a multilateral treaty between Japan and 49 countries of allied countries. And by this treaty, Japan returned to the international community after her defeat in the Second World War. actually, after the Second World War, Japan's main national agenda is come back to the international community. And actually, India consistently supported the aspiration of Japanese people. And actually, India didn't sign this peace, multilateral San Francisco Peace Treaty. The reason is that treaty, then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru regarded this is not fully restore Japan's sovereignty or equality with the other countries. So India chose to conclude separate bilateral peace treaty between Japan and India. So the same day when that San Francisco Peace Treaty became effective, it's 28th of April, actually Japan and India exchanged note to establish our diplomatic relations. And in June, we concluded bilateral peace treaty. So that is the beginning of our formal government-to-government relations. But in these 70 years, actually, initially, we have very friendly and cordial relation, but substantially, our relation was not strong. But so we have been nurturing and strengthening our relation, and in these 70 years, today, as Professor Taranikar-san, I'm sorry, Tarani-san said that today we enjoy our strongest ever relation between our two countries in our history. We call that special strategic and global partner. So, as Professor said, that during Prime Minister Kishida's visit in March, we reaffirmed and about our relations. So it's now very wide and deep. So government-to-government relation is very, very strong, and our economic relations are expanding. But now I need much more exchanges of people, and especially I need exchanges between the universities, university students, professors. So by talking that, I just touch upon our historical background. Okay, so the 70 years ago we established the diplomatic relation, but our relation is much, much older, back to the 6th century. Please. Next. So Buddhism came to Japan in 6th century through China, Korea to Japan, and so through Buddhism, the culture and philosophy of India was introduced to Japan. Next, and actually in our record, first person visited Japan from India was, his name is that Bodhisenna. It's Bodhisenna in Japanese. Actually, he was in China those days, but those days we sent a missionary from Japan to China. And before that, we learned Buddhism through Chinese translation. But those Japanese people wanted to directly learn from the person who were coming from where Buddha born. And so asked Bodhisenna to visit Japan. And he came to Japan in 736. This is our first recorded person in Japan from India. And he, this painting, it was not done such long ago. Only this was made in 13th century. But remembering about Bodhisenna's visit, the central person, Japanese, that is Emperor Shomu. Those days in that 740s and 50s. And 752, we have very famous temple. People have interest in Japan, especially culture. You know that temples, and the big temple that called Todaiji, and the big Buddha is maybe someone knows about Big Buddha. And that Big Buddha, the eye-opening ceremony, this was led by Bodai Senna. It was 752. And Bodai Senna, in that picture, Bodai Senna is the right side of the Emperor Shomu. So, and two other monks are Japanese monks. So you may understand how we put importance to Bodai Senna, because it's in the same statue in like Emperor Shomu's position. And next, and so these are Big Buddha, and that is Tozaiji temple, and those pictures are those imaginary picture of those days. Yeah. Next, and those days, not only Buddhism, or with Buddhism, we also introduced that script. Those days we adopted Chinese character, but with learning more directly from India, that Japanese famous monk Kukai introduced that Siddhamatrika, that Sanskrit script, to Japan, and we also made our phonetic chart that Aiueo, Akasatana, like according to this Siddhamatrika. Next. And so as arts, you know, the left side is that painting in that Ajanta cave, and the other side is painting in Horyuji temple, one of the oldest Japanese temple in Japan. And this is a wall painting. You see that very identical. Little bit expression of face is different, but the pose and those things, these we understand that influence of that this true Buddhism. Next, and with that Buddhism, all the Hindu gods came to Japan, actually as a guardian god for Buddha. So this is one of the even today, one of the most popular gods in Japan is Benzaiten. Benzaiten is Saraswati. So Saraswati is called in Japan Benzaiten. Next, and also all other gods like this left side. So you may see different face because it's Japanized. So this Tai Shakten, this is Indra. Indra become Japanese name is Tai Shakten, and Brahma is Bonten. Next, like that Lakshmi we call Kishoten, and Skanda we call Idaten. So even today, some temple in Japan only worship Hindu god. Japanese temple, not Indian temple. The very famous one is in Tokyo, Shibamata. Shibamata has a nice temple, very old temple of this Tai Shakten. Is that Tai Shakten is Indra. And in Ueno is a very famous tourist attraction. We have very nice Benzaiten temple. It's temple of Saraswati. Like that. Actually, Japanese people, those days, although they didn't know about India, nobody visited India, but they have the image through this Buddhism and Buddhist culture. And so those Japanese regarded India as a heavenly place where Buddha born and lived, and that's called Tenjiku. So long years Japanese people admire about India, but actual exchanges happened very recently, as Professor Tika-san said that about Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. So in early 20th century, actually 1902, that Japanese philosopher and artist Okakura Tenshin or Okakura Kakuzo visited India and interacted with the family of Rabindranath Tagore. And his visit was followed by famous Japanese painters. Many Japanese painters came to India. and like Yokoyama Taikan or Hishida Shunso or Arai Kampo, very what can I say? Most of Japanese know those famous name of Japanese style painting, but when they came India, they are influenced by Indian painting or Indian painters. So this was written, painted by, one is Yokoyama Taikan, another is by Hishida Shunso. Although painting style is Japanese, but Taikan made Karis and Shunso made Saraswati. Though little bit face is little more mild, and the other side that those painters influenced to Indian painters like Abanindranath Tagore, Gaganendranath Tagore, or Nandalal Bose. So they learned Japanese style ink painting or these kind of things. So this is started, and as cultural exchanges, intellectual exchanges started, of course, economic exchanges or economic relations just it started expanding. And actually, I'm very happy. My association with India is very last 35 years. And when I meet people of India, always tell me, thank you for Japan for helping India's economic development or economic relations. But I'm always mention, we have to thank India because first, Japanese development after Meiji Restoration from feudal society to modern country, we had to modernize our country by strengthening our industry base or creating industry base. And for that, in the late 90s to early 20s, we started with cotton trade and cotton manufacturing. First, we imported cloth. Of course, first we imported that garment, but later import cloth and just we stitch. And after that, we imported thread, and then we weave, and then final product. And finally, we started import cotton from India, and that made our industrial base of those days, and it contributed a lot for the development of pre-war Japan. Like this way, after Second World War, actually first we imported pig iron from India, and with that we made the steel and those products. And then we started import iron ore from India, and we developed our heavy industry, especially steel industry, and steel industry became the base for the other car industry or whatever. So again, after Second World War, in our modern era, that you say, miracle of Japanese development after Second World War, but this was contributed by our trade with India. And next, so in that case, this is before Second World War, actually how Indian independent leaders of that, those who struggle for India's independence, that two bosses, they are very famous in Japan. One is that Rash Bihari, he went to Japan actually to procure the weapons for fighting with, and but those days Japan and the UK was an alliance, so he was not secure. But some Japanese protected them, and one family protected them, and he married with the daughter of that family. The family name is Nakamuraya, and so he could stay in Japan, and later he led the, you mentioned that Indian Independence League. And this Rash Bihari's activity was taken by the Subhash Chandra Bose. Maybe Subhash Chandra Bose is very famous, so you no need to mention him. But after escaping from Kolkata through the Afghanistan and Europe, and he went to Germany, but he decided he cannot do if stay in Germany, so he shifted to Japan. Actually, it's very strange. Those days, submarines of that German submarines that goes the Cape of Hope, okay, from Africa and Madagascar. And Japanese submarine went there. And he moved from German submarine to Japanese submarine and came to Japan. Actually, those days, this was 1943. Small, not today's that submarine, those days, but two submarines met near the Madagascar. Anyway, and so he took the leading of that Indian National Army. So this was during the war, and after the war, this is another very famous Indian person, actually loved by Japanese because he was a judge, one of the judges who participated that military tribunal for Far East. We call that the Tokyo War criminal trials. And this Justice Barrow submitted dissenting judgment or opinion. So because of that, Japanese people value that rather Vinod Barrow's contribution. And so as I said very beginning that as Jawaharlal Nehru thought that full sovereignty and equality, India and Japan concluded bilateral peace treaty in 1952. So since then, again come back 70 years. And about today's Indo-Japan relation, I leave it to Professor Horimoto. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Consul General. I think that was enriching and equally educative. I think you took us back to our own civilizational roots and the type of relations that India and Japan share. Now we move on to the next speaker, Professor Horimoto Takenori. One of the special things about it, even the Prime Minister had made a mention of him, the type of contributions that he has made for India-Japan relations. Professor Horimoto is a visiting professor at the Gifu Women's University and senior fellow of Center for Contemporary Indian Studies at JAA. He has served as a professor of Shobi University Graduate School, project professor of Kyoto University Graduate School, and participated in study committees, groups, as well as projects organized by various ministries, think tanks in the universities, either as a chair or a member. He specializes in contemporary international politics with special emphasis on Indo-Pacific, India-US, India-China, and Japan-India. Professor Horimoto has authored and edited 16 books in English and Japanese, including the latest Future Directions of India 2021, besides 120 other articles, commentaries, and lectures. As a PhD graduate of Delhi University in MA Political Science. There are some of the notable works of Professor Horimoto. One of them has been Explaining India's Foreign Policy from Dream to Realization of a Major Power. Then there is also debate, the Indo-Pacific region needs a strategy, both hedge and engage China. The free and the open Indo-Pacific strategy, India's very response, relations between Japan and India in the Indo-Pacific, age transcending the Quad framework, that was also published in Japan Review. He's also extensively written on India's foreign policy, including of Modi diplomacy and the future of Japan-India relations for Nippon, Indo-Pacific order and Japan-India relations midst of COVID-19 for the Journal of Asian Economic Integration. He has also written on Japan-India relations beyond coping with China in the Indo-Pacific region for the Journal of Indian and Asian Studies. There are a number of them. I mentioned to you people 121. That itself speaks of the scholarship that he belongs to. It's an honor and privilege to have you here at Pondicherry University, sir. On behalf of all of us gathered here, I warmly welcome you. And
thank you very much, Professor Kishon and Professor Takani also. Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to say something about that, but in my case, in generally speaking, Japanese universities allotted 90 minutes for one lesson, but 90 minutes is too long for me, and even for person who are listening to my lectures, maybe get tired. Me too. So most of the cases, I try to say to my students that I'm going to end up my lecture within 60 minutes, So please do concentrate and then listen to me so that I can be very safe without saying anything extra. Anyway, but today I'm not going to speak more than perhaps 30 minutes, and still in my feeling, still it is longer. So the slide in this PowerPoint showing is that, please change the next one, please. This is the main stage where the Indo-Pacific is, the moving. And then next one, please. Next one, please. Yes, this is a gist of my presentation. The regional order in the Indo-Pacific, protagonist, rule maker, and rule follower, India and Japan, and way ahead. And then I'm just wondering how should I abridge my talk in this from now on. My argument is very complicated, and then but at the same time very simple. In this slide, what I mentioned in this slide is very simple. That quadrilateral 2007, and second quadrilateral was 2017, and U.S. definitely are the protagonists. And then, but the U.S. is showing it's a kind of decline of powers in terms of national defense and economic strength also. So what happened is the National Security Strategy has been published 2017 and 2022. And there is the latest one is published last week, was about the National Defense Security Strategy. That is more straightforward in arguing China is the main competitor. That is more straightforward. And whereas in China's case, the Xi Jinping is always saying great de-jurialization of Chinese nations and centenary of 2021 and 2049. 2021 is, as you may be knowing, the establishment of Communist Party of China. And second, 2049 was establishment of the China, People's Republic of China. But you just see this one, China's military activity and in recent wolf warrior diplomacy is somehow related above one. 2017, the second squad has been established. This is coincided with the Xi Jinping's wolf warrior diplomacy. So there is some kind of conflict of the way of looking at each other. But my conclusion in the last phrase of this PowerPoint is, I'm always saying to in my articles, in my lectures, and so on, please do not overestimate China. But at the same time, please don't underestimate China. This is a very subtle point, but we are very careful about this. So, this is a sort of informal meeting, and there is no Japanese person here except Mr. Taga, and then this is quite informal. And then I dare to say that, really speaking in Japan, rightist. I'm not a diplomat, so I'm quite free. Not unlike him. He's, bound by certain norms and rules by Ministry of External Affairs. But in my case, I'm quite free. So I'm saying in that sense that in Japan, rightist group is tend to put emphasis on the threat of China. And then that means naturally the military expenses and defense expenditure has to be expanded. Otherwise, we cannot cope with the rise of China. But still, I am worrying something that it is okay. And as a realist, I share their opinion. But at the same time, at the moment, what is most necessary thing for Japan is how to expand education, how to reach the old people's life, and these are the fundamental things without taking care of these two aspects, the only military expenditure doesn't make any sense. So this is a kind of contradiction in myself, so to say. And second slide, please. And then you see this list. The necessity of cooperation in terms of economy and defense for the time being between the two countries. You see, at the moment, India's GDP is 6. Remarkable rising up. 10 years ago, no China, no India in this best 10 of the global GDP country. Now India comes up to the 6. And then next defense, there is misspelling, sorry, expenditure. The US comes first, as you know, China, and then India comes third. India comes third. How it is big difference has taken place in the past 10 years. And then Japan is coming to the ninth, 491. So India has increased its defense expenditures. But there's a small footnote. Japan's exclusive defense-oriented policy. That is to say, Japan should concentrate more on the peaceful way of achieving world peace and something by limiting its defense expenditure 1% of GDP. You please just make a calculation that Japan is 506 and 1% is just 491. But there is a many strong opinion in Japan in these days. It should be increased to the 2%. That means suddenly becomes third of the world. And then as a realist, I share their argument. But at the same time, I dare to say that the increment of the defense expenditure naturally makes army becomes very powerful and try to suppress the democracy. So in this sense, I am very worried about this 2% argument. Necessity and then scare, very worry about this aspect. So in this sense, we should take care of these two aspects. But anyway, India has become number 3 in the world. Last week I appeared on the one TV show. The main essence, it was 1 hour broadcast on live, and main essence was why India support Russia. That is the main argument, main point of this program. And I explained the very complicated situation and so on and so. But anyway, one point is hinged on the amount of defense expenditure. Next slide, please. And India's case, its area of maritime interest and investment is as shown in this map. It is make it clear by the Navy in 2000. It is not mentioned clearly that it is 2015. The Indian Navy has brought out this report, and you see the Indian Ocean is main primary interest, and then light blue area is secondary interest of Indian Navy. You just make a difference. But whereas in Japan's case, the primary interest is not the Indian Ocean, rather in the Pacific, in Asia Pacific. So in that way, there's a gap. And then my conclusion, it becomes longer and longer when I say something about this aspect. But my conclusion saying first, very briefly, the foreign policy of strategic autonomy, which is brought forward by 2012 by Non-Alignment 2.0 by the Delhi Policy Group and some other people. And then my argument is this strategic autonomy means maintain its strategic independence, not be influenced by any other parties. I mean to say, much more frankly, I should say, India's foreign policy is famous, of course you may be knowing, non-alignment policy. I am saying in my articles and in my lectures and saying that non-alignment and then this strategic autonomy is the same, almost same. It means to say that it try to propagate, try to expand its national interest. And in order for that, it is necessary to keep its own position without influence, to be influenced by other people, other countries. Next slide, please. Japan is basically a status quo power, and similar problem with China to India. India's almost same problem. India has a sort of the territorial dispute with China. Japan has territorial dispute, not in continent but in sea, and then this is same situation happens, and then historically speaking, the Japan has putting forward sort of partner diplomacy. Firstly, Anglo-Japan alliance, Japan-Germany-Italy alliance, and then now Japan-US alliance. This is simply because lack of power. Very simple. And then in order to keep its own independence, to have certain international sort of influence in the world, to have a partnership with other country has been necessity. But whereas India's case, try to do the same thing. And then if I say, I'm very frank with you, that after 1947 till the end of 1990s, the India's power is very less. No one take care about what India says. But after India becomes very strong, and then GDPs and then national defense expenditure has been increased, what happened now is all the countries are taking care of, try to heed, try to listen to what India argues. So this is a new aspect. And then, but at the same, and also I'd like to point out one more point. Japan has experienced foreign threat only twice. The Mongol invasion in the 13th century and US occupation soon after the Second World War. Whereas India's case, roughly 200 years of Mughal Emperor, another 100 years of British Empire. And this makes India's mentality toward the threat, toward the sort of foreign occupation is very strong. Not comparable to Japanese in average. So this makes big difference. So how to adjust, how to cope with mutual perceptions about the idea of defense is quite different. Next slide, please. So what I am saying these days, institution building in the Pacific, ultimate goal of institution. At the moment, in the Indo-Pacific, there is no mechanism at all. In Europe or in continent Eurasia, there is a sort of the framework. As you may be knowing, EU is also, European Union is one, and then NATO is one. Whereas during the Cold War period, there is Warsaw Pact agreement, and then at the moment, Russia tried to create new institutions. But in case of in the Indo-Pacific, there is no such framework, no such sort of the mechanism to keep peace in this region. So I am saying in the second arrow shows two domains and entities: economic objectives and entity for building connectivity among sub-regions and economic integration through the production network and value chains, and political and strategic objective entity for the security contrivance for maritime stabilities. Next slide, please. perhaps this is the last one. I'm going to soon finish. Please wait for a moment. The way ahead, very simple. The last one, step-by-step approach. The first thing we should do is to start with something based about in the field of economy. Economy is rather easy to do in comparison to the security issue. So we should do something in the field of the economy. And then after maturing, after certain kind of framework has been established, then we move forward security. And then finally, East Asian community for regional order is important. I am saying all what just now what I said is simply said it is idealistic. Otherwise, I can't find out what could be done in the region of Indo-Pacific. Only this way, gradually, we can produce some kind of the fruits in the coming days. And in this connection, I should say, this is extra thing, and there is perhaps no recording, and there is no sort of the extra point, which I'm going to say from now on, is that I think India is going to be a major power. India's influence is deciding everything, in great influence in the matter of world life and death. And in this connection, I wonder how India is responding to the Ukrainian issue is very crucial. I am very clear about that. And then in this connection, this month, 24th of this month, there is a Quad summit is going to be held in Tokyo. And then 4 top of the countries attending. Of course, the president, prime minister, of course, including Prime Minister Modi is coming. How to respond this problem? How to respond? And 3 countries most probably pressurize Prime Minister Modi to do something. I don't know. And then most probably, most difficult job in this Quad meeting held in Tokyo is what kind of joint statement is going to be made. And this is very crucial. And then of course, because of the big growth, big jump of India, India's attitude towards this joint statement is very influential in this coming summit. So please watch the newspapers and so on. Number 1. Number 2. In my case, I have been studying. Firstly, I came to India in 1969 as a student of Delhi University. I took a political science MA. And then since that time on, I continued my studies. And then second time was 1984 to 1986 in special assistant in charge of political affairs of India. And then 2 years, total 4 years. And after that, almost every year, except past 2 years, during the time of COVID. But almost every time I came here, and then discussing, meeting many people, and arguing with many people, and so on. And Indian people themselves, you yourselves are feeling that India is growing, and gradually feeling the global position is changing. And most probably, when you go abroad, the people's way look at you, your argument, your papers might be differently understood. So in this sense, the India's move from now on is very crucial. So please take care of this aspect. I was thinking to say something more extra than that, more big things, something, but it is too much for me to say. So I just stop my argument here. If any question, I am welcome to listen to that and answer to that. Thank you.
Good evening to everyone that you've all assembled here. And it gives me immense pleasure to propose a vote of thanks for this event today. At the outset, it is our profound duty to thank Professor Gurmeet, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, of Pondicherry University for guiding and making this event a reality. I would like to thank Professor Tharani Karasu, also Director Studies, Pondicherry University, for gracing this occasion on behalf of the Vice Chancellor and delivering the presidential address. Thank you so much. And of course, we can't thank enough the Consul General of Japan in Chennai, Sri Taga Masayuki, for taking initiative to have this event, and also his keenness to collaborate with Pondicherry University. His keynote address was insightful and it gave an excellent account of history of India and Japan relations, and also provided foresight with respect to the direction the relationship would take in the future. Sir, the Department of Politics and International Studies would want to forge greater ties with Japan and have many more such programs in the future. Professor Horimoto, a veteran in India-Japan relations, a great friend of India and someone who always wants India and Japan to grow together, is also here today. His very presence is a blessing for the younger generations, and his works would stay as long as India and Japan are on the map. Professor Horimoto's enthusiasm and intellect should guide all of us to become better scholars. I thank him for his special lecture. I would also like to thank all the professors and the faculty members who are present here from our department and other departments also. I would fail in my duty if I don't thank all the individuals behind this event. And we were supported by the Vice Chancellor's Office, UMISARC, EMMRC team, the Office of the PRO, and the Electricity Department of our own, and especially our own students. I'm going to name them because they have put in a lot of effort here. Navneet, Adityan, Shivashankar, Amal, Sumant, Yasin, Stephen, Fakira, and Mehrunisha. And what will be an event without a keen audience? So I take this opportunity to thank all the students who enthusiastically participated and made the event a grand success. Thank you so much, everyone. Jai Hind.